Air Corps. Can you tell us where you were based in Europe and during what years?
Yeah, we were based in England, Tiverton, England, south of Norwich, England, in what they call East Anglia. And we arrived there in December 1943. And we left there, you might say in April 1944 when we were shot down. And I stayed in Germany and left there about March, toward the end of May of 1945.
How old were you and what was your rank?
My rank was second lieutenant, and I was, at that time, we were shot down. I was about, I was 20, not quite 24 years old. I was 23 years and 11 months.
During what period of World War II were you stationed in England?
During what period of World War II was I stationed in England? December of 1943 until April of 44. April the 12th of 44 to be more specific.
How were you received by the English?
Oh, the English? Yeah, they, overall, I think they were glad to see us, yes. However, as you probably have seen recent documentaries on D-Days, they said they were overpaid, oversexed, and they're over here. And they, especially the men, weren't too happy with the American. Some of them weren't too happy with the American soldiers over there. Yes, go ahead.
How did you and your aircraft get to England?
Oh, let's see. We were training in Nebraska. Sioux City, Iowa was our base. We went to Watertown, South Dakota from there for training. And from Watertown, South Dakota, before we went overseas, we all had to go to Lincoln, Nebraska and leave from there. And we left Lincoln in the latter part of November of 1943. I flew from Lincoln on into Georgia, and I forget what base it was in Georgia. We had to land at. We landed there. Took off from Georgia and went to Puerto Rico. We flew into Belém, Brazil. From Belém, we flew over to Casablanca, over the Atlantic, all the way on an over-water flight. That was the longest over-water flight, part of it. We were on our trip over to England. And then from Casablanca, we went to Marrakesh, French Morocco, and we had to stay there a number of days because the weather was so bad. In order for us to get to England, we had to wait to have clear weather conditions. And then from there we flew on out to what they call it was a zero meridian at that time in Greenwich Village. Greenwich Meridian. Greenwich zero meridian is the Greenwich line. And we flew up there to England. We had to fly there because to bypass France. We had to fly west along the northern coast of Africa to get ready on in England because the Germans could have picked us up to try to fly over France again because they had occupied France. And that's we arrived in Plymouth, England at that time. Yeah, Plymouth, England. And that's in the southwestern part of England. That's how we got to England. Then we flew on into our base at Tiverton the next day.
What plane did you fly and how many members were in the crew?
I was a B-24H that we took over there, and there were 10 members in the crew. The day we were shot down, however, we were flying a B-24J, which is a modified B-24 from an H. They made some changes, and I don't know specifically what the changes were, except I do know that the nose turret was much more comfortable. Well, it was not comfortable, but it's a little better to control. Easier to work.
How long were the flyers usually stationed overseas? Was your time determined by actual missions or a period of time?
Well, not a period of time. The crew members. Now, this just applied to the crew members. I'm not talking about ground crew people that weren't flying in combat. But the combat ground crew members, when we arrived in 43, 25 missions. That's all we needed. And at the end of that time, we could go home. And that time, length of time depended upon how many missions, how often you flew, and weather conditions factor there too.
What was the mission?
What was a mission? I didn't mean to describe the mission. Is that the idea?
Right.
Okay. What was a mission? Well, usually we had a PA system in our Quonset hut, and they would wake us up. And depending on how far you had to fly into the target, depending on what time you got up in the morning. I know our mission to Berlin, it seemed to me like we got about 2:30 or so in the morning for that particular mission, because it's such a long mission. It's going to be such a long mission. And we went in, had our breakfast, mess, and of course after we got dressed and so forth, and then rode our bicycles to the mess, got on our bicycles, rode over to the briefing room, and there they briefed us. The briefing consisted of the commander usually was up there explaining the target, or the person that was leading the whole group into the target, he'd get up there and brief us. The briefing consisted of where the target was located, also enemy, what kind of enemy resistance you could expect through anti-aircraft fire or fighters. And then the intelligence officer would get up there and tell us about the different types of enemy action we might receive, where it was located specifically on the map, and so forth. And then also would tell us if we were taking chaff. We have what we call chaff we could throw out of the waste guns of the plane, and that chaff was to disrupt the radar of the Germans on the anti-aircraft fire. In other words, you throw the chaff out, which was pieces of aluminum foil, you might say, floating through the sky to pick up the radar signals, which would again divert the enemy fire from our aircraft, which worked out pretty good right off. Then the weatherman would give us a briefing what kind of weather to expect, and then we'd have to synchronize our watches. Everybody on the crew, no matter who you were, you synchronized your watch, and then you got out. And sometimes as you were leaving the briefing room, there were maybe 3 or 4 chaplains in the back of the room who would pray for some of the crew members that wanted to go over there and give aid, and then you go and get in a ship, get your big bag, your B-2 bag, into a truck usually, GI truck, or a Jeep, and head on out to your bomber. Usually it was a truck though, because we had so many crew members, about 10. Fighter pilots usually had a Jeep. There's one pilot, you see, but we usually took a truck out there, and then we get out to the aircraft. Each one of us had a job to do to inspect the aircraft, make sure everything was fine. Hop in the aircraft, wait for the pilot to give his signal from the control tower to take off. We fly on up to our assigned altitude, set for formation, bombers, and then when all the group got together, we would head out toward the target. On the target, you fly to your destination, but before you got to the target, you had what they call an initial point. That initial point was maybe 15-20 miles from the bombing target. And so you could all form flying into the target in formation. That's why you had to be so far on the target. You fly over, drop your bombs, come on in, turn off, go head back home. Interesting, I haven't mentioned it before to you, but usually if a mission was going to last, say 4 hours, it would take you about half that time. You take it twice as long to get home as it would to go in. See? So if it was a 4-hour mission, you'd fly one and a half in, and then coming out 4 hours. In other words, it took you twice as long to get home as it did getting in to the target. The saying was that once you were over the target, dropped your bombs, you were on leave. Meaning you were free to leave. But getting back, that was something else, yeah. Good.
How many missions did you fly before you were shot down?
Well, we had completed 22 missions. We were on our 23rd mission when we got down. We completed 22.
Could you describe what happened the day you were shot down?
Oh, you mean, let's see. Yeah. I think we took off, just like I described to you, we had to go to the briefing procedure, check the aircraft, took off, moved towards the target. But this particular day was somewhat unusual for us in the fact that all the other groups in the 8th Air Force had received a recall. A recall meant they aborted the mission. Boarding the mission meant they canceled it. They were all going to go back home. And we never got the recall. Why? I don't know. But that's what happened. And we ran into some bad weather. We know now why it happened, because we ran into bad weather. Bad weather means we were in some dense clouds at our altitude and broke up our formation. As soon as you broke up the formation, the fighters were out there waiting for you. And if you were by yourself, you didn't have any protection from the other aircraft like you usually did. You were flying in formation. That was one of the main purposes of formation is accuracy in bombing, but also protecting one another from enemy aircraft. And we didn't have any protection. Five of our planes were shot down from our particular group, 445th group. 5 of them were shot down that day.
Did all your crew members bail out safely?
Yes, as far as I know, yes, they did. Yeah, but safely, yes, they bailed out safely. Some of them had some minor injuries, yes, as I heard. Of course, I really don't know exact details of each one.
Were they all captured?
No, I know our pilot wasn't captured, nor our navigator wasn't captured. Possibly one or two other crew members. I'm not sure of this, though, but I know the pilot and navigator spent the rest of the war in Switzerland. See, Switzerland is a neutral country. They got on the ground, and the underground took them, tried to get them to Switzerland. And they were successful. They got to Switzerland, and they just waited out the war there. They waited out the war with, also, interestingly enough, the Luftwaffe. That's the German Air Force crew members, too, that were shot down or couldn't get back home.
How long a period of time was it before you were captured? After you were shot?
Oh, I don't know, an hour and a half, something like that,
And how were you captured?
A civilian turned me in, and rightly so, I think, because he was surrounded by German soldiers looking for me too. So he turns me in. As I understood it, this is all just hearsay. As I understood it, he received a reward in civilian return. And then airmen would receive a reward for that. What the reward was, I don't know. How much it was, I don't know.
When you were turned over to the Germans, what questions did they ask you and how were you treated?
Well, first, I remember this German officer, and I don't know what his rank was, but he said to me, "Sprechen Sie Deutsch?" And I said, "Nein." And of course, that he set it back on his heels too. He didn't explain. He didn't look too happy like that. He took me over to all you might call it a farmhouse, or what I would call it anyhow, because this was a rural area, agricultural area we were in Belgium. And he interrogated me there, asked me all kinds of questions about what kind of. He didn't explain. He didn't look too happy like that. He took me over to all you might call it a farmhouse, or what I would call it anyhow, because this was a rural area, agricultural area we were in Belgium. And he interrogated me there, asked me all kinds of questions about what kind of a plane we were in, who the pilot's name was, and asked some of the questions you asked me. How many people were on the crew? When did you arrive? Well, they knew when we arrived in England because they knew it was a 445th bomb group. Because just backtracking a bit from your question, that evening when we had landed in the daytime at Tiverton, our base in England, that evening Lord Haw Haw came on and welcomed the 445th bomb group to England. And he was right. He says, a lot of you guys are going to get shot down. So, but going back to your question, and this farmhouse, they asked me this different question. All I had to do, when we were interrogated, pretty well, I think, before we were even caught. That all we had to do is give our, according to Geneva Convention, our name, rank, and serial number. That's all I need. So that's all we had to give. And that's all I ever gave. And from there, well, your question was, that was all. Did that answer your question?
And then did they treat you well?
Oh, did they treat us well? Well, they moved us. Yeah, overall they did. Yes, they moved me by truck to Namur, and when I got in the truck, I sat way at the back of the truck, next back of the cab of the truck. It was just filled with German soldiers. It was dark, late at night, and I think I mentioned this to your mother, that this German soldier reached over and grabbed my hand. He shook it, friendly manner, and then later on he nudged me with his elbow, and he put a sandwich in my hand, and I ate it. And that was a good feeling, because I hadn't had anything to eat. I was hungry. And did they treat me well? I think that's an indication. Because when we got to Namur, the food was good, yes. Yeah. And, of course, that's right. Overall, yes.
How long did it take to transport you to a prison camp, and where was the location?
Let's see, we went, how long did it take from April the 12th, when they caught me, until about, toward the end of April. 27, 28, 29, somewhere along in there, yes. And where was it located? It was Sagen, Germany, S-A-G-A-N, Sagen, Germany. It's now in Poland, since the revamping of the maps and so forth. East Germany no longer exists, but that's how long it took.
Could you describe the camp?
Could I describe it? Yes, I think so. It had a number of barracks. Single-story barracks, high off the ground. When I say high off the ground, they had airspace underneath them. That was the purpose there too, because people were known to try to escape. They're digging tunnels. The best place to start a tunnel usually was right in the barracks. You see, they did. And then they were made, didn't have much insulation. They had shutters that would close it. You had to close those at night at a certain time. Wooden shutters, won't close. You had to have your lights out. Barracks, they had 15 men to a barracks. We had 3 tiers, each bunk, which means you had 5 bunks on ours. You had a stove, and you had a table. And 15 of you couldn't sit at the table, but most of you, the table. And then a communal bath, shower, restroom, and let's see, what else do we have? That's about it. It wasn't what you call the best accommodations, but it wasn't the worst either.
How were you treated in the camp?
How were we treated in the camp? Well, as long as you obeyed the rules, you were treated all right. The rules were that you had a wire. First of all, you had your steel fence, and you had the guard towers every so many yards. And those guard towers were manned 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And you had a wire that set in, maybe 15 feet or so from the fence, and you weren't allowed to go over that wire unless you asked permission to guard. Now, sometimes, why would you have to ask permission to guard? Well, maybe a ball went in there or something like that. You have to ask permission. Otherwise, they shoot you if you try to get in there. And outside that, I think we were treated pretty good. We had recreation, plenty of recreation, lots of time on your hands, and that's plenty of it.
What kind of food were you served?
What kind of food were we served? Well, they had ersatz, honey. I remember that. That wasn't too bad either. And we had what we call a blood sausage that they would serve us. They would serve us soup out of a communal kitchen. They prepared the kitchen. And then we had bread. I don't know what it was made of. We had all kinds of stories, and all kinds of stories were made of it. It wasn't the type of bread you're used to. It was very heavy, lots of moisture in it. And no butter. I think I mentioned to you we didn't have any soap at all. But that didn't know what you asked about food though. Coffee, there was some kind of a thing they served that we make coffee out of, and we call it Erzatz coffee. Okay. That's that, and then that's fine. Well, that's what they served us. We would supplement that, of course, with Red Cross parcel, I mentioned to you earlier. And that food was pretty good. We'd have British Red Cross parcels. That's when I first came in contact with kidney pie. I think it was kidney pie. And of course, we had our Spam. You know Spam? Powdered eggs and powdered milk. Yes, powdered eggs and powdered milk. Lots of powdered eggs and lots of powdered milk when we got the Red Cross parcels. And that was it. Usually, and among the 15 men in the barracks, one man was usually the cook. Sometimes, some of them, they would rotate that job among the different people in the room. But in our particular situation, Moldy, Portland, Oregon, he was our cook, and he stayed our cook all the time until we moved out in January. And he picked up all kinds of things to prepare with our suggestions. You have to, improvise.
Did you receive any correspondence from home?
Yes, we did. We did. Sporadic. You never know for sure how long it would take. 6 to 8 weeks maybe. Then I'd send letters out home too, and it wasn't too much we could say because there's censored coming and censored going. Mail I received was censored. Mail I sent out was censored too. Yes, we received correspondence.
How long was it after you were shot down that your relatives received news of this event and also you were captured by the Germans?
Well, your Grandma Mabel knew about it probably, I would think, within a week or so, because a friend of mine was flying another bomber and saw us go down. And one of our jobs as observer, and other crew members too, were to observe when the plane was in trouble going down. He would count the number of parachutes going out of the plane, and then he'd report this back to the intelligence officer at the end of the mission. Well, he also not only reported it back at the end of the mission, but wrote a letter to Grandma Mabel saying he saw that all 10 parachutes had opened and that they were headed toward the ground. That's all he could tell. That's when she knew I was down. That was much sooner than when she received a letter of missing in action. That's all it was a missing in action. Now that probably, I think, got there maybe 4 to 5 weeks afterwards. And then, when did she know I was a prisoner? Well, the Red Cross contacted her, let her know, and then also informed her at that time what she could make up a package and send to us. So there was another, in addition to the Red Cross parcel, we got packages from home. Well, there's 15 of us in the room there, and all 15 of us got packages from home, so we would share. It was a communal living, is what it was. We would share all the things with everybody else. Soap, which we didn't get, I mentioned it earlier, and towels, and of course food. And even the people that didn't smoke cigarettes would get cigarettes, ask for cigarettes from home, and we would get to. And interestingly enough, I didn't mention this to you at all, but we would take those cigarettes and turn them in, and they could bribe the German guards on occasions. American cigarettes, boy, that's a premium to Germany at that time. And we could bribe the guards, and they bribed the guards to get what? Oh, maybe a piece of garlic or some onions, or radio parts. This thing happened too. All kinds of things.
Did you suffer any injuries when you were shot down?
No, actually no medical attention at all. Oh, I take that back. A doctor came by when I was in the morgue. I wasn't eating too much. They were concerned. Germans were concerned that I wasn't eating too much. Something wrong with me. The doctor came in and interrogated me. I said, no, nothing wrong with me. I just didn't feel like eating. I wasn't too happy. Okay? But I ate later on, yes.
How long were you a prisoner of war?
April the 12th, 1944, till April the 29th, 1945. How do I know? Well, a reminder, your dad and your mother brought me that picture, painting, Liberation of Moosburg, Germany. That's April 29th.
As the war was ending, did your treatment change?
Yeah, I think it did, yes. It got better. It got better, yes. In the camp we were in, no, I can't say it's better than that, but after the war ended and we were liberated, yeah, we could get out and move out on our own and get a lot of these things we couldn't get, waiting for them to, because you see, when we moved to southern Germany in Moosburg, we had no contact with Red Cross parts, so they couldn't get them to us. Everything was in a state of flux. Everything moving here, moving there, and everybody was moving, moving too fast to keep up with us.
Did you feel you were mistreated at all?
No, I don't think so. No. Well, only really time might have been when I was in solitary confinement, but that was, everybody got that treatment, so yeah, that's, no, I don't think so.
How are you liberated?
Well, when we left Stalingrad 3, we could hear the artillery to the east of us coming in. We knew that was the Russians coming, and they moved us out. Then they moved us into Moosburg, Germany, which was near Munich. And we could hear the artillery coming in again. This time it was coming from the west. So we figured we're going to stay put. They're not going to move us anyplace. We just sit and wait. And this is what happened. First piece of equipment I saw come in was a Jeep with a 50 caliber machine gun on it. And it had three fellows in it. One of them was a cook, one was a clerk typist, and I can't remember who the third one was. But they came in and talked to us, and he told us it won't be long and the rest of them would be coming along. Sure enough, they did. Tanks started coming in. It was General Patton's, the unit from General Patton's Army, their Third Army, and they liberated us. And they didn't stay long because they were busy chasing the Germans across the Isar River towards the east. And that's where we were.
How long did it take you to return to the United States after being liberated?
Well, April the 29th said we were liberated. We probably got back, maybe about 4 weeks or so after that, in May, some latter part of May, first part of June. When we got back to the United States, Camp Patrick Henry, Norfolk, Virginia, one of the first things we did, went up to the telephone booth. Camp Patrick Henry, Norfolk, Virginia, one of the first things we did, went up to the telephone booth, stood in line, made a phone call. Guess to who? And didn't cost me anything either. So it didn't. Free. We were free. That's it. That's it. Cut it off for you. Bombardier is set up here, okay? We're operated nose turret, and of course, back of him was the navigator, and then back of the navigator was the pilot and co-pilot. Back of them, back in through here, was the engineer and a radio man. And then you had two waist gunners on either side, one here and on the other side. And below here, it doesn't show here in the picture, but we had a ball turret. Took another man, and then you had a tail gunner. Tail. Okay, these are 10 members of the flight crew, and this one has an that's Gilsdorf, our co-pilot. He gave me this picture of this when we went back to Williamsburg last fall, and was it this spring? I forget which, but anyhow, that's why the X is there. Joe next to him was Joe Pavelka, the pilot. Phil Solomon, the navigator, and myself. Hanson, radio man, and we also had another Hanson, young fella down here. He was a ball turret man. This is Ciano. We called him the Count, Count Ciano. Count. He was a waist gunner. Clark from New England, tail gunner. Heinzwitz, the engineer. The one man I skipped was this gentleman here. He was our armament man. But he didn't end up with us. He quit after 4 missions because it was just too tough for him. He couldn't handle it. So he just up and quit. And he didn't quit and went home, no, but he quit and went over to the armament section and helped load bombs.
Have this drawing?
Well, yes, this is drawn by Bob Neary. In fact, he has a date on each one of these drawings. This particular drawing was September the 18th, 1944 of our barracks. And as you can see, the tree stumps I talked about earlier are still in the ground. We dug those tree stumps out. And by the way, we used for shovels these tin cans and that dig the dirt out around and then take the stumps out and use it for wood inside for cooking. And then in addition to that, you'll see over here, where you put your garbage, tin cans and so forth. And it's about it there. As you can see, quite a few chimneys in there too. And they do sit up, there's an opening underneath here where the Germans could get in there and check to see if there were any tunnels being dug underneath the barracks. Go to the next one there. This is inside of a barracks room. Again, Bob Neary drew this. This has a date on it, November the 26th, 1944. You see the triple tiers on the bunks here. The bunks had wooden boards underneath here, and you had the straw tick mattresses. And when we first arrived there, those boards were maybe 12, 14 inches wide. And there was 8 of them there. And so what we did, we took the boards out, cut them in half, put 8 boards back underneath there, and gave the rest of the boards to the people who were digging tunnels. And the guys would come around periodically and count the number of boards that were underneath these. As long as there were 8, that's all that was necessary. Underneath here, you see a Red Cross parcel here, underneath a stool, of course, and storage bin. And here's one of the sausages I was telling you about earlier, blood sausage. Okay, now, this is the West Camp, we like to call West Compound, of Stalag 3 in Sagan, Germany. And this is the main entrance here, going into it. All these barracks here, there were, I forget how many men would hold each barracks, but they were all, as you can see, pretty well lined up here. But you had 2 buildings, and one was a cookhouse, and another one was a theater. Now I don't know which one of these happens to be here, but one of them was a cookhouse, one was a theater. And over here you had a laundry room. And then you also had a building where you could go in and keep current, up-to-date news that was coming in through BBC, because we had a radio in the compound there. Well, if we didn't have the compound, we get the message from another compound, and they keep us up to date as to what was going on. Over here, the restrooms, outside toilets, and we had also inside facilities too, showers, washrooms, and that. And they had what they called, rather interesting little thing, they had what they called a honey wagon would come in and pump out the latrines. And the honey wagon, the fellow that drove the honey wagon had a big smile on his face because he had a big red cross across the tank, which meant he was pretty safe from any air attacks from fighters because it usually honored a Red Cross symbol. But that's these are guard towers here. Guards in there, and let's see. I guess that's about it. Unless you had some questions there, Sarah. Did you have any questions on that?
What's the inside fence?
Pardon me?
The inside fence?
Oh, yeah. All right, this is the wire I mentioned earlier. You didn't dare step across that, you get shot. You had to have permission to get across that, okay? That was, as I said, 15 to 20 feet in from the outside fence there. Okay?
Thank you, Grandpa. Grandpa, for spending your time and sharing your experiences with us.
You're welcome.